Jurassic World Rebirth was not a particularly good movie, at least in my opinion. You're completely free to disagree with my take, but the consensus from critics and fans alike seems to be that the film was somewhat disappointing. The movie also just so happened to get a full 6-set wave of LEGO sets, which got me thinking, what are the worst movies ever made with officially released LEGO products? So I set out to find out just that. I present to you the top 10 worst movies with LEGO sets. Now before I begin this countdown, I need to explain exactly how I determined the worst movies here. Initially, I was just going to use my own subjective opinion, and I was penciling in Star Wars Episode 8: The Last Jedi for a pretty high spot on this list. However, after some intense deliberation, I felt like I should try to get an internet consensus ranking for these films. And I ended up doing probably a lot more research than I had to. I ended up pulling scores from 5 separate reputable internet review sites. Those scores are as follows: the Rotten Tomatoes Critics Score, which is probably the most famous movie review website in the world. I also use the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes as well. Additionally, I use the IMDb score, the Metacritic score, and my personal favorite, the Letterboxd score. I converted all of these into multiples of 10. So say the Rotten Tomatoes score was 50%, that would be a 5 out of 10. Or if the Letterboxd score is a 3 out of 5, that would be a 6 out of 10. I added up all 5 scores, divided by 5, and the average rounded to the nearest decimal point is the score I assigned to each movie. And these following 10 movies are the ones with the lowest scores. I'll talk about the scores for each selection. I definitely overcomplicated things for myself here. I hope all of that makes some amount of sense. Now let's dive into the actual countdown. Number 10, the Angry Birds movie from 2016. This film scored a 5 out of 10 on my scale, and it actually received a pretty big wave of sets in April of 2016. Honestly, the LEGO sets are pretty cool if you ask me. They were very colorful, had some great play value, were pretty good deals overall, and the minifigures, albeit very strange, were actually kind of cool. However, the film itself, while I don't remember it being awful, was just kind of a forgettable animated kids movie. It was a video game adaptation, which are notoriously known for being bad, and this movie was no exception. I wouldn't call it one of the worst movies ever made, and honestly, I was a bit surprised it even showed up at number 10 on this list, but its 5 out of 10 score was bad enough to come in at this last spot. Number 9, Pirates of the Caribbean: Dead Men Tell No Tales from 2017. This movie also received a 5 out of 10 per my scale, but because the overall decimal score was lower before I rounded to the nearest decimal point, it's going to be higher in today's ranking. And keep that rule in mind throughout today's video, because this happened a number of times. A lot of these selections actually tied. And overall, I think this is the worst movie in the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. The last movie before this one, Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides, was actually pretty close to making this countdown. It ended up being a dishonorable mention. But Dead Men Tell No Tales, I think, is definitely the worst of the POTC series. However, the one big LEGO set we got from it, the Silent Mary, was a really cool design. I love this kind of rotting pirate ship build. I think it looks fantastic, and the minifigures were great as well. And oddly enough, a consistent theme throughout this video is the LEGO sets sometimes ended up being really good from these otherwise crappy movies. And this set is no exception to that rule, but it definitely was a disappointing film when it came out in 2017. Number 8, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice from 2016. This movie received a 4.9 out of 10 on my scale, and I remember this film just completely landing straight on its face when it came out in March of 2016. Everyone was so excited to see Batman and Superman on the big screen together in live action for the first time, and the film was a complete dud. At least the theatrical cut was. The director's cut is slightly more watchable, but still not not great. Additionally, you're probably wondering if Justice League is going to pop up on this list. I kind of thought it might end up being in this video, but it had a 5.1 out of 10, so it's actually only a dishonorable mention, but it was pretty close. However, per my scale, Batman v Superman is the worst movie the DCEU ever produced that got Lego sets. This film was a complete crapshoot. Number 7, Too Fast, Too Furious from 2003. This movie also received a 4.9 out of 10, and honestly, I'm kind of surprised this one made the list. This is a bad movie, but I always enjoyed it somewhat ironically. I think it's so bad it's good in a lot of ways. And in the 22 years since this film's release, I feel like it's kind of iconic, especially because of the cool cars, which Lego has thankfully made into a couple of really nice Speed Champion sets. I actually think this is probably my favorite movie on this list, ironically enough. Not a great movie by any means, and I understand why people would give it a low rating, which is why it's here, but it's not one of the worst ever, if you ask me. Number 6, Jurassic World Dominion from 2022. This movie also received a 4.9 out of 10, and you guys probably thought I was going to say Rebirth, but Rebirth actually wasn't even a dishonorable mention. It's bad, but not that bad. However, Jurassic World Dominion is easily the worst film in the Jurassic Park / Jurassic World franchise. This movie, it just sucks. It absolutely sucks. Geez, that Rotten Tomatoes score is hard to look at. Same thing with Letterboxd. I mean, this film was just universally panned across the board. And like all the other Jurassic World films, Lego produced a lot of sets from this movie, and most of them are pretty cool with some awesome dinosaur pieces. Although I probably would debate this is the worst wave of Jurassic World movie sets Lego has ever made, especially the big set just feels kind of underwhelming to me. But the movie itself is just really terrible, and I am not surprised whatsoever it made this list. Number 5, The Lone Ranger from 2013. This movie received a 4.7 out of 10 on my scale, and again, I'm not surprised at all this film wound up in this list. It's the second movie starring Johnny Depp in today's video. And one more Johnny Depp movie will end up being a dishonorable mention later in this video. The funny thing is, the Lego sets based on this film are absolutely miraculous. They are some of my favorite Lego sets ever made. It's basically just a Western theme with the Lone Ranger name slapped on it. And every single set, even the small ones, is an absolute banger. I love all of these sets, and I reviewed all of them back when they came out in 2013 and raved about them. But the movie was a huge flop at the box office, and it's kind of a problematic film now because Armie Hammer the star is not in the best graces within Hollywood. I'll let you do your own research if you're not sure about what's going on with him. Additionally, they cast Johnny Depp, a Caucasian man, to play an iconic Native American character in Tonto, which was a very questionable decision even in 2013. So yeah, this movie hasn't aged well. It was panned by critics and audience members alike. It bombed at the box office, but it did produce some awesome Lego sets. Number 4, Batman Forever from 1995. This movie scored a 4.6 out of 10 on my scale, and it's actually the most recent addition to this list. Batman Forever is celebrating its 30th anniversary this year, and to celebrate, Lego made a $100 rendition of the Batmobile from this movie. It even includes a minifigure of Val Kilmer's take on the Caped Crusader, and I'm actually really excited for that Batmobile set. I think it looks dope, and I love some of the aesthetics from Batman Forever. However, the movie is not really good. A lot of people, including myself to some extent, have lots of nostalgia for the film because it was the Batman we grew up with before the Nolan Dark Knight trilogy took over and really redefined the character. But when you go back and actually watch this movie, it is utterly ridiculous, and it makes perfect sense why critics panned the thing. Which ultimately is why I'm not surprised to see this movie wind up on the list. I'm actually more shocked Lego is giving us a set from the film. And now I'm wondering, in 2 years, will we get a 30th anniversary Batmobile based on Batman and Robin, which is even worse than Batman Forever? I guess only time will tell, but I'd probably buy that set if I'm being honest with you. Number 3, Peter Pan and Wendy from 2023. This movie scored a lowly 4.5 out of 10 on on my scale, thanks in large part to the abysmal 11% audience score it received on Rotten Tomatoes. 11. I cannot believe it's that low. It also just so happens to be the only movie in today's video I have never seen, and frankly I have no desire to ever watch this movie, especially after reading all of these reviews. I'm also stunned this movie got a Lego set. Where on earth did this come from? Lego has not shown these Disney live action remakes that much love when making sets for them. We've gotten plenty of sets based on the animated classic Disney films, but for live action remakes, I think it's pretty much just this and The Little Mermaid. The Little Mermaid is not a great movie, but it wasn't nearly bad enough to make this list, but Peter Pan and Wendy did wind up here with its one single Lego set. Set number 43220, Peter Pan and Wendy's Storybook Adventure. Completely forgettable movie, even though it came out just 2 years ago. The set was pretty horrible with these tiny little mini dolls. I feel like nobody bought this thing. So it's pretty surprising that this movie even has a Lego set. The Lego set itself is terrible. Apparently the movie is awful, and that's why it's at number 3. Number 2, this one is going to ruffle a lot of feathers. It is Star Wars: The Clone Wars from 2008. This movie scored a 4.2 out of 10 on my scale, and keep in mind, this is Star Wars: The Clone Wars, the movie, which was released theatrically in 2008. This is not indicative of how people responded to the Star Wars: The Clone Wars TV series, which was a spin-off of this film. This is just the movie, the one that got a big wave of Lego sets in August of 2008. And look, I'm sure lots of you have tons of nostalgia for the Clone Wars movie, but I always thought this Clone Wars movie was pretty awful. The plot is just not compelling, and Ahsoka is really irritating. They definitely reinvented her character for the better in the TV show itself. And it was by far the lowest rated Star Wars movie. In fact, none of the live action Star Wars films even really sniffed this list. The lowest rated was Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, which received a 5.8 out of 10. So this movie is 1.6 points lower than that film. It also holds a distinction of being the lowest rated animated movie Lego's ever made sets based on. And once again, the sets actually from this movie are fantastic. We have the Republic Attack gunship, a really solid version of the ATTE. I love the Magna Guard Starfighter. I love the V-19 Torrent. There are so many great sets based on this film. It's so interesting how some of the worst movies Lego's ever made sets for have some of the best sets out there. But The Clone Wars is not the worst movie ever with Lego sets. Before I reveal the number 1 worst movie, I have a few dishonorable mentions to go through. I already highlighted a couple of movies throughout this video, but I have 5 more that nearly made the list, including Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I'm kind of surprised no Marvel movie made the top 10, but this movie was really close. The aforementioned third Johnny Depp movie I was talking about is Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald. I would have sworn this movie would make the list. It is by far the worst Harry Potter Wizarding World film ever made. This movie was such a convoluted mess. Pixar's Cars 2 from 2011, which is by far the worst Pixar movie, and in fact it's the only Pixar movie on Rotten Tomatoes with a rotten score at the time of recording this video, was pretty close. Another failed video game adaptation / failed Disney blockbuster movie, Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, nearly made this list as well, and this also was another film that got some amazing Lego sets. And finally, speaking of Disney, Wish from just a couple of years ago in 2023 was pretty close too, and these sets had been on clearance for so long because nobody saw this horrible movie. But with those out of the way, let's reveal the top spot. That spot belongs to number 1, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from 2014. This movie also received a 4.2 out of 10, but actually it was more like 4.1. I'm just generous and rounded up to the nearest decimal point. 3 sets were made based on this movie back in 2014, and they were all pretty darn good if I'm being honest with you. The live action Ninja Turtle figures do look a little bit cursed, but they had lots of cool pieces, and the sets had great play value and pretty good display value as well. I especially really love the turtle lair. I thought that was a better version of said lair than the one we got based on the Nickelodeon animated show a year before. As for the movie itself, I saw it in theaters in 2014 and thought it was pretty average, just kind of a forgettable blockbuster film. I was 17 years old at the time and probably more forgiving, so maybe if I rewatched this movie as a 28-year-old man, I probably wouldn't like it nearly as much. But it was panned across the board. Pretty much none of these scores were good. In fact, they were really, really low. Critics hated it, audiences hated it, classic Ninja Turtle fans weren't super happy with the film, especially because of the wacko designs for the characters themselves and the somewhat poor choice of voice actors. People did not like this movie at all, and that is why it is the worst movie ever with Lego sets. And there you have it, y'all. There is the list. What are your thoughts on these selections? Let me know in the comments down below. And do you think my formula missed anything? Thank you all so much for watching today's video. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Peace out. God bless. Bye-bye.